What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another live broadcast of the Engadget podcast. I'm Senior Editor Devendra Hardwar. Today I'm joined with Deputy Editor Nathan Ingram. Hey, Nate.
Good morning, Dev. What's going on?
Good morning. Everything's going on. It has been
Busy
a crazy
week.
week here. And we also have podcast producer Ben Ellman, who may be on and off the stream because he is getting sick. So,
yeah,
hey, Ben.
I am the proud owner of a chest cold that isn't COVID for the first time since 2019.
Oh, wow. That's you've had a pretty good run.
Yeah.
Hello to everybody in the chat. I see people were actually waiting for us in the chat, so that's cool.
We're like a minute late.
We're a minute late. We weren't waiting for another stream to end. We're just like getting all our ducks in a row so we could start streaming.
Yeah, but we're talking about important stuff. That's why people were waiting. We got
a big one today.
All the Google I/O stuff and Zelda. Like, this is a huge
Zelda.
episode.
I feel Zelda is the big lead here, and we have Nate who reviewed it for us in Engadget. Nate, you've been living Zelda,
Yeah.
I'm jealous of that, but also I fundamentally realize when the request went out, hey, who wants to do Zelda? It's like I don't have 5 hours to play a game in a week, So yeah.
You have 2 kids.
I have 2 kids.
Yeah.
I
I
have
have 0
projects and all our other work, and it always takes up time.
I played a lot. It was basically I was like this week, and I was like, I'm just playing.
I mean, I would love that excuse.
6 hours. Like, 6 hours
honey,
at a
I'm
time.
working.
It was great.
This is for the job. Hello, everybody in the chat room. Hello, Cud. Hello, Turbine. Peter Lee. Deepro9. Deepro, Buddy 305 Love. Hello, the usuals. Some usual folks. Yeah.
Buddy is also in the sick club, apparently.
I mean, yeah. I feel like maybe it's because of the seasonal transition, too. Like, maybe allergies are hitting us at the same time. It's so much fun. Okay, so Sherlin's not here again because Sherlin's still in.
She's at I/O. Yep.
Yeah, she's at I/O, so she's gonna be traveling back later today.
She's flying today.
Yep. Oh, good.
That's a quick trip.
I think so. I'm not sure how that's working, but hopefully we'll see Sherlin next week on the show. But I know people have been asking. Everyone's like, "What did they do to Sherlin?" She's busy. We're all.
What did they do? She was on like vacation, but not really vacation. Also, like she was out but working.
We almost lost Sherlin in Germany, but you know what? Follow her wherever you can to see what's up.
If you must.
I think let's just get into it. I believe Sherlin's on Instagram. That's probably the best place to follow her. But hello, everybody. Let's get cracking.
Okay,
we've got so much news to cover too. Yeah.
Yep. If you have been in the chat before, you know what's going to happen. If you haven't been in the chat, welcome. We do like a little slate, and then we do some silence, and then we'll actually get into the episode. So I'm going to count down from 3, and at the end of 3, everyone on stream is going to like clap or snap their fingers, make whatever preferred sound that they're going to make. And if you want to support us, you can put a clap emoji. Is there a snap fingers emoji in the chat?
There is.
So you can do that, and then we're going to do like a little bit of silence because that helps me with audio things, and then we're going to get straight into the Pixel Fold. So counting down from 3, 2, 1, and some silence. I'll let you know when the silence is over. Smash that thumbs up button while we're being quiet. Okay, we are done with silence. Let's get into all this important stuff.
Smash that thumbs up and, subscribe to our channel. We always appreciate it, folks. We've got so much. We're kind of reshaping our video strategy, so, keep an eye out for things. But I think we are ready to dive into the show.
I just smashed the thumbs up.
Please, you smash it, retweet, whatever. Share us around, folks. Okay, let's go. Let's go in 3, 2, 1. What's up, Internet, and welcome back to the Engadget podcast. I'm Senior Editor Devendra Hardwar. This week I'm joined with Deputy Editor Nathan Ingram. Hey, Nate, how's it going?
Good morning, Dev. Things are pretty good over here. As you know, it's been
pretty
busy week.
Yeah, this is a busy week also for you, Nate, because Nate has spent the past couple weeks reviewing The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. So we'll be talking about that. But also, we all just survived Google I/O, and there's been a ton of news out of that, including the Pixel Fold. So that's why Sherlin's not here for this episode. She's still out there, mopping up some meetings and stuff. But we'll chat about all the news from Google I/O. As always, folks, if you're enjoying the show, please be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcatcher of choice. Leave us a review leave us a review on iTunes, drop us an email at podcast@engadget.com. You can also join us Thursday mornings, typically around 10:30 a.m. Eastern, on our YouTube channel. We'll do live streams there. We often do Q&A. Sometimes we show off gadgets. Nothing to show this week, but, tune in for the future. It's a fun time. Let's dive into the biggest news of the week, Nate. And honestly, it's probably Zelda, but everyone's been hyping up the Pixel Fold and all the Google stuff. So let's clear out all that. The Pixel Fold is here. The long-rumored Google Foldable, the company's first foldable, is here. It's going to start at $17.99. It's available for pre-order. Shipping sometime next month. The vagueness of that is really unusual to me. But yeah, it looks like a Galaxy Z Fold 4, but more googly, maybe a little more refined. I think the hinge looks smoother. It's also like more outwardly projected. There's less of a crease on the inside of the display, although there is some there too. So foldable from Google. Nate, I like to bring you on for Google stuff, Nate, because you're our resident Chromebook fan. So I have to figure you're the biggest Google fan we know. Also, Sherlin's a pretty big Google fan. But what do you think of this thing, first off?
I'll say, first off, it's interesting because I am a big Google fan, generally speaking, but I actually don't own or use any of their hardware. I'm an iPhone guy. I'm an iPad guy.
Okay.
But I still like to see like what else they're up to and see what the competition is doing. I think we're going to differ on this because I think you are more into the idea of a foldable than I am.
I mean, and I've been on the show. I've been really saying they're not there yet either, but I'm more intrigued by this one, but go ahead.
This one feels a little more polished to me than the Samsung ones, I would say. I think this is a reasonable time to get into the race, right? Samsung, as usual, was like, we're going to push this thing way before it was ready, right? I mean, 4 years ago. It's coming around now. I think the price is still insanely prohibitive to a normal person. I just can't imagine who's going to buy this thing except for like the real hardcore.
We did used to think that about smartphones in general, right? Like, when will they get over $1,000? And I feel like Apple pushed it first with like some of the Pro models. Like, once they crept past $999 for a base level price, once we
it's kind of all
$1,200, it's all, you're just creeping upwards. We had $1,200 phones. I forget, I got an iPhone 13 Pro. That thing costs quite a bit, so I feel like people are used to that. But yeah, $17.99.
And I think, I mean, obviously we have to talk about the price, but like, let's talk about the device first, and like put that in context, because I think that's really important. It does look more refined to me. I like the looks of the front screen. Like, they did a good job of making that take up as much of the front as possible to like give you that like normal phone experience when it's not open, right? Like, I think that first of all,
5.8-inch external display. It's OLED. Both the internal and external displays are OLED.
Yeah, and I think that's important to get that right, because the first Samsung foldable did not, and it was terrible. This one, however, looks pretty nice. I mean, like, I'm intrigued by this. I think, as usual, it all comes down to like software that can take advantage of the larger screen. It looks like they're doing some interesting stuff in that regard too. So like, it's got some potential, but I don't know. I just don't necessarily feel like the trade-offs in terms of like heaviness and thickness and possibly some compromises on the like camera hardware, for example, are worth the trade-off yet. I've never used one as like a daily driver. I kind of want to, so I can see like, okay, how often do I find myself flipping this thing open? How valuable is that to me? Is it worth a trade-off?
Makes me want to test foldables more, to be honest. Like that is where I'm coming down. But Sam Rutherford from Engadget, who did the hands-on for us at I/O, he is a big foldable fan. He's had a Galaxy, Z Fold for years, actually, several generations of it. He is totally okay with the flaws. Like he loves like that flexibility. I have to say, Nate, like, this is a really interesting foldable for a few reasons. On the show, I've talked about like the kind of annoying factor of a foldable, where to really use your phone, you kind of have to pull it out of your pocket, you have to open it up, then you can start phoning around. Now you have a pretty decently sized screen on the outside. Certainly, the Galaxy Z Fold 4 has one, but smaller, and it's less like functional. That one's like, okay, you can see your notifications, and that's kind of it. Do some basic phone work. This is like, it's a pretty decently sized screen. Like, you could do a lot of good work if you just need to pop your phone out of your pocket. Then when you need to expand, you open up the display. Google showed off these software features where, like, if you are playing a YouTube video on the front screen, when you open it up, that continues into the big screen. So there's like a seamlessness to the experience that I really like. This hinge seems really nice. It just seems a little stronger than Samsung's. There are just a whole bunch of things. You're talking about thickness, Nate. It is thick when it's closed. It's 12.1 millimeters thick, which is pretty hefty compared to like even a Pro iPhone or something, and it weighs 10 ounces, I believe. So it's even a little bit heavier than the Z Fold. But when you open it up, these are two 6 millimeter thick
Pieces,
like
right?
slats.
Yeah.
So it's actually pretty thin as a device once it's opened up. And I've been considering like getting an iPad mini or something at some point, or just another companion iPad for around the house. And I am starting to see the point of this. I don't like the price. I don't like so many things. I don't know about the durability of this. The outer screen is still a Gorilla Glass Victus screen, I believe, but the inside display has like a plastic covering because they all need to, so they can actually bend.
Yep.
Both screens are OLED and 120 hertz, so they're going to be nice and smooth, and they support OLED or they support HDR, so they're going to be really bright too. You did bring up the camera thing because this is technically a very thin device, even though it feels thick when it's folded. They had to like step back a bit from the camera sensor, so this is the way you could think about this phone. It's basically a foldable Pixel 7 Pro. And it costs a lot more than Pixel 7 Pro, but it runs the same basic hardware. It still has the Tensor G2 chip from last year, which another contentious thing, to be honest. It has 12 gigabytes of RAM, the same basic camera setup, but also slightly less impressive cameras. It has a 9.5 megapixel external camera. That's the one on the very front, an 8 megapixel internal camera. That's the one that shows up when you open up the thing. On the back, there's a 48 megapixel main camera, 10.8 megapixel ultra wide, and a 10.8 megapixel telephoto with 5x zoom. All of those specs are just a little better on the 7 Pro. Although it's like the same still has an ultra wide, still has a telephoto lens. But you are getting a worse camera for a much more expensive phone for the hardware you basically had last year too. So this is a weird dissonance, I think. What do you think about that, Nate?
Yeah, I mean that is a really good point because right, all this hardware was pretty cutting edge 7 months ago or 8 months ago when the Pixel 7 came out. Now it's a little bit less so. Losing the camera or giving up some of the camera for me, like that's the big thing. Is I think that a good camera is still like among the most important things that I look for on a phone. And so it would be hard for me to say, yeah, let's spend $1,800 on something where I'm going to get a lower quality experience.
This still looks like a good camera, to be honest. And just to be clear, the Galaxy Z Fold 4 has much worse cameras than the comparable like big Galaxy series. So Google did do like some innovation here, on the camera side.
Yeah, I mean, I really want to look. I'm looking forward to seeing the samples that we get from the review. I mean, the review will come soonish, I'm sure, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes. But yeah, your point about the using this instead of an iPad makes a lot of sense, right? Like having this one device that can give you a bigger screen experience is great. The proportions of it. The inside screen ratio, I'm looking at it. I'm like, is that going to be ideal for videos? It looks like it's a little wider than
a little square.
So it's a little square, but it's less square than the Samsung. So I think that it'll be a little better for video. You mentioned HDR, which is why I was thinking about that.
And also they're showing a lot of footage of like you turning the thing sideways when it's opened up, and you're kind of you have the video on the top half, and it looks like a mini laptop, and video controls on the bottom. That may actually be better in many cases, even though you're not taking full advantage of the screen.
It's still pretty big. Yeah,
it's still pretty big. I'm intrigued. I think that's the main thing here. This thing.
The main takeaway is that Devindra is intrigued.
I am intrigued. I mean, I feel like that's the main thing, right? Because these are expensive phones. They're not for everybody, but it's really, really fascinating to see like how far Google has certainly come. Because their phones have been fine. The Pixel phones, I think, since the Pixel 6, they've come up with like a very
a formula.
Nice formula, good camera. We got AI, we got all sorts of stuff. Not really flashy designs. They're all like very, very subtle, very, very like mainstream stuff. Let Samsung be flashy. I feel like that's what Google's been doing. And now this one's like, well, we want to have fun too, and we want to have fun in a different way. What will it take for you to get a foldable, Nate? I feel like if you're on iOS, we're all waiting for Apple to do something, right?
Yeah, and I think that obviously, like you said, it eventually will happen. If I had to guess, I'd say another 2 years, maybe not like this fall, maybe the fall after that.
I think the rumors are we're expecting not this year's iPhone, but the next one,
right?
A major revision.
So like End of 2024, something like that. Yeah.
I would say give it a couple of years because, folks, sure, I'm sure Apple is prototyping the hell out of foldables and like trying different hinges, trying different designs.
Yep.
I do feel like this basic setup is kind of the thing I would like to see from Apple. Give me a nice big outside screen, give me a nice screen inside, make sure those hinges are good, and get the cameras good. Like I as a parent, I want an all-in-one device. I want something that can get me the good cameras, that could be durable for when my kids are like messing with the phones, but also when I have like 5 minutes to breathe, I could just open it up and like do big screen stuff. That would be really nice.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that having like the iPad OS or like some experience similar to that on the larger internal display could be really good, right? Just like software that takes better advantage of the larger screen. We'll have to see if they do that or just keep it like, you know, iPhone OS and just like have it be super basic. But I'm also really interested in, yeah, you mentioned the hinge. Like that's the thing I think of as like Apple, when they do industrial design right, they really can do it well. And so I'd like to see what they do with that. That'll be great.
I feel like we're all kind of waiting to see like the big focus now is on Apple's AR glasses, and it almost feels like the industry is by like, we really don't know when AR or is going to be a mainstream thing. I feel like the thing people really want to know about is like a foldable or the next stage of mobile stuff for Apple. And you know what, Nate? I'm sure it'll come soon. Apple, I feel like, is in a better position. The other funny thing during I/O is that Google's like, when they're talking about the Pixel Tab, the Pixel Tablet too, they almost sort of like put down Android tablets to begin with too. They're like, oh yeah, you may have a tablet, but it's probably in a drawer somewhere and lost its charge. That's because it's running Android. It's because you guys freaking ignored big screens for years, you idiots. Don't make fun of the tablets now.
I know that was a really weird choice because I'm like,
really weird.
That is not what the people who use, that's not the iPad experience in my history. I have one that I use almost every day.
Well,
it runs at
you have an iPad. Yeah.
Right. It runs at a battery sometimes. I just reviewed an Android tablet and it was highly uninspiring. I did not have any need or desire to use it. I think that, I mean, if we're pivoting to Pixel Tab, I'll get into it more.
Soon. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's well, it's just funny that they brought that up because like I think Google's finally paying attention to the big screen. We talked about Android L being the sort of like that's the big screen experience.
But they've been talking about that for 2 years, I think.
For 2 years.
Which is just crazy to me.
It's a lot of the stuff I'm also looking at being like, well, that's nice. It's nice that you finally gotten there. It's funny it took you so long, Google. Like and I also can't trust like when they make big design leaps or anything. But anyway, that's the Pixel Fold. It is $17.99. It is Google's first foldable. We're gonna have a review up soon, of course. But you know what? Let us know what you think, folks. Podcast@engadget.com. Do you want a foldable? What will it take for you to get a foldable? People have been asking me about when will these things get affordable? And my God, I don't know. 5 years? Like to have something under $1,000 that folds in this way? Because right now you could get a Z Flip or something like that folds in.
But you don't get the larger screen, so
you don't get the larger screen, but you do get like a less intrusive device. So maybe for some people that would be a thing to play with. I like new designs, so we'll keep an eye on all this stuff. Let's move on to the rest of Google I/O.
Yes.
And there were a bunch of devices there, but the first thing I want to talk about, it took Google like nearly 2 hours to get to its devices. And at I/O, what they wanted to do was basically present, hey, we're not behind on AI. Look at how AI is integrated in all of our products. They announced the PaLM 2 large language model, which is a big deal for them. This thing is going to be powering Bard in the future and pretty much all their products. It is faster, it's more efficient, and they said it can even run locally on mobile devices. So if when they put this into phones, you don't have to wait for a ping to a server to answer your questions. Like, it should be able to do some stuff. It's very interesting. Andrew Tarantola wrote this up for us. This is going to underpin everything Google's working on. On its own, not much to say, but we did see like the future of what Google search could be. They showed off their search generative experience, and sure, take a look at that. It looks really cool. Basically, when you do a Google search, you get generative AI responses at the top, sort of like they look a little flashier than Bard's responses, but maybe more like Bing AI. Did you look at this, Nate? Like, what do you think about Google like integrating AI into the search experience.
Yeah, I think that the two things that were most important about AI, like obviously, the Palm 2 stuff is important for the background, but it's not something that a consumer is going to get. But the way that they're going to use that in search and then also in workspace stuff, Gmail, Docs, Slides, etc. Those are kind of the two things where I think normal humans are going to run into it the most, right? And this generative search stuff is interesting because it does feel like an advance on what they've been doing already with the knowledge graph and showing you stuff in search besides just like a list of websites.
Do you find that stuff useful though? Like none of the
sometimes
stuff has like ever really worked out for me.
Really, that's interesting. I feel like if you're like just looking for a quick answer to something, it can be useful. But if you want to do like deeper research, you have to go into links or deeper. And I think that one of the things about the search generative experience is that we were talking about this on our Slack yesterday. This is 100% reliant on content from other places.
Yep. The entire internet. Yeah.
Right. So you have to wonder how other websites are going to feel about someone doing a Google search and the page being taken up by generative AI results that are pulling from your websites, but not actually linking to them. Like it's easy to imagine, someone searching for, tell me about the like Pixel Fold, and it gives you this whole spiel and it's pulling from like our review and reviews from other sites, and they never click on our site and read our reviews.
Yeah, this is like the worst, like basically what we were all worried about when we started seeing the knowledge graph stuff, because for so long, the Google search was like a very pristine experience, right? You had the search bar, you had clean results at the bottom, and then I think maybe toward the end of the 2000s, it started to get filled with stuff, right? They got into shopping, they got into all sorts of things. They had to integrate all their different services into search while still keeping search kind of fast. My main thing is that, I feel like Google will seriously need to rethink how this works. And Google has basically built an empire on ads and making ads, powering ads around the internet, powering ads on websites and stuff. If Google's pulling content from pages and people are like, that's enough, I don't need to click anymore, I do feel like they need to start setting up something where like, okay, you're getting a share of like whatever ad is showing on that Google search page at that moment. You know, like they have to rework that somehow. Otherwise, like I'm looking at the state of media and being like, nothing will survive. Nothing will survive this. And also, we don't know if these things it pulls up are actually good, or actually the good things. Like at this point, the generative AI answers are decent, but they have a lot of problems, and there's even a warning at the bottom, like, for the love of God, don't. These aren't like actual professional results, please.
Yeah, I'm looking at our article, the screenshot at the top. At the very top of the generative AI answer, it says generative AI is experimental. But what does that mean to a normal person who doesn't follow this stuff? Right? Like if you're like not somebody who's listening to the Engadget podcast or reading our site or other sites like us, you're not going to know what that means. You're just going to say, okay, here's some information. Is this right or useful? And then there's also the thought of like sites starting to game this. Like obviously there's a thing in the world called search engine optimization. There's going to be like generative AI optimization where sites try to make their content rank in the AI answers, right? And it's easy to imagine like it's not going to be necessarily about what's most accurate. There could be like we see in social media, the stuff that pops off is like the hot takes, the like incorrect takes, that sort of thing. I'm just imagining people trying to game this AI in a way that is dishonest, which is scary.
That's the power of SEO gaming. Like that was a whole thing. I remember like once I started writing for online sites, like that was what everybody was doing. Like everybody was trying to optimize for Dig and for Reddit and to get your Google searches and to follow like whatever is trending on Google News. That's still kind of happening for a lot of sites.
Well, now you think about like if you search for like a show that's hot right now, right? You'll get these like weird news sites, air quotes, that like we'll say, like, oh, like here's everything we know about The Last of Us season 2, and it's like we don't know anything, but here's 800 words. There's 800 words about season 1, and then there'll be like one quote from somebody who's like, well, we're gonna maybe start it in the fall. Like that's the whole thing. But yeah, that's weird SEO, digging, and you could see the same thing happening for AI digging. I will say I'm looking at again this screenshot, and there are a few links in the generative AI section to other sources, which I'm like, okay, it's good that there's a few things right there up top, but none of us know how it is getting this information. What is like, we understand to some degree, it's still a bit of a black box, but like again, search engine optimization is a well-researched topic at this point. What what's the generative stuff is pulling from. How does it know what's a reliable source? We don't know yet.
Mm-hmm. I see people in the chat saying, like, Buddy30511 in the chat says, if you don't know what generative AI is experimental means, then you shouldn't be using it. Sure. Yeah, that's the experimental part. This stuff is going to be integrated in the full thing soon.
Right.
So,
right.
like, what
you're just going to do a search and it's going to show up, and you're not going to know.
That's just general consumers, and they're going to see this new thing, and they may not know exactly, like, should I trust this or not? Like, there's a lot of stuff we just don't fully know. So that's my main concern.
You know what I was going to say, Devindra, is that you say you may not know if it's reliable or not. The thing is, like, people who've been using Google search for years are going to think it's reliable because they're used to using it. So they're just going to assume it's a new way of presenting information and that it's just as reliable as the stuff they were getting before it launched.
My worry is getting it right at the top of the searches too. Like, I do feel like maybe a sidebar may be better to sit alongside the actual links. We're basically seeing the future of the web being reshaped right now, folks, around AI, and there's a lot of uncertainty. We just don't know, but I have reasons for concern, because I do feel like Google and Microsoft and everybody are just barreling into this, and everyone's like, hey, wait, have you thought about this and this and this? Have you thought about, like, what this means for media? Have you thought about, like, what this means for verifiable facts online, which is already a big problem? No, they're just kind of doing it.
This just popped in my head, and I haven't thought about this phrase in a while, but it feels like a bit of a return to the, like, move fast and break stuff mentality of the 2000s that you heard from, like, Facebook and to some degree Google, in terms of just like, we're just going to build this stuff and put it out there and, like, figure out what the problems are later. And, you know, that's something. It's a choice you can make.
I do feel like we don't expect Microsoft to be the company to take those sorts of risks, but they did do that with ChatGPT, with Bing AI Chat, and with all of its investments in OpenAI. And yeah, I think they just put their foot on the accelerator and was like, well, hey, let's do this. Let's see what happens here. And that forced Google to announce Bard really haphazardly. Like, Google was not ready for this. The entire industry, it seems, wasn't ready for this. So we are only, what, 3 months, 4 months past the time, like, Microsoft announced Bing AI Chat, and, like,
I think we could easily just cap it at, like, say 2023, like, right, like, this is the year when this stuff is going.
I know exactly when it happened, Nate, because I took my rare 2 weeks of vacation, and I couldn't be there because Microsoft told us a couple days before the event to come to their campus for this thing. You know, as a weird aside, like, there was a news story yesterday about Microsoft putting money into Sam Altman's was it fusion generation power, like cold fusion power.
Yeah.
That's a whole other thing. But go look up that news, folks. Like, by 2028, they expect to be making power, and Microsoft is, like, ready to take advantage of that. So it is funny to see them just taking these big risks these days for things that we used to think were impossible. Things like functional AI, and this is not really AI. This is more chat prediction. But, you know, Microsoft is taking big steps here, and I don't think they fully thought a lot of this through. But speaking of not fully thinking things through, Google also showed us Google Photos with generative AI.
Let's get into how this is going to come into consumer products. This is a big one.
So it looks like basically you're getting a lot more touch-up tools, but the one that really amazed a lot of people was, if you go look at our article about this, there's a child sitting on a bench with balloons, and there's a cityscape behind him, and the photo is not centered, right? So the first thing Google showed off is the ability to just, like, hold down and select, like, specific objects and move them around, make them larger. That is similar to something Apple's already offering, like, within, I forget what they call it, but it's within.
Oh, right. Where you can tap, like, on a human and pull them out of it. But you can just, like, that's just to, like, highlight them, and, like, you could send, you know, remove the background. This is, like, actually, like, the generative AI fills in the blanks of, like, if you move, like, in this example, right, the balloons are now fully balloons instead of being cut off at the edge.
Magic editor, and what happens is when they want to center the kid in this image, they basically just dragged the bench forward, and things that didn't exist in the image before, like the other parts of the balloon, the other half of the bench, the other part of the wall behind it, is all just, like, estimated. The sort of the way that, like, the I don't know what the magic wands work or the touch-up tools work in Photoshop or something, except it's like it's a whole portion of the photo that didn't exist that is just, like, basically generatively created.
There was another example during the keynote where they showed somebody, like, standing in front of a waterfall, and they were wearing, like, a bag over their shoulder, and they're like, let's just get that strap out of here, and it just, like, went away, and it filled in the coat underneath it.
And they were able to like resize that person and like put
yeah,
their
they moved the
under,
human so that
yeah.
their hand was more positioned under the waterfall.
Mm-hmm.
I hated this. This
mean,
was viscerally upsetting to me because
mm-hmm.
of the fact that someone on our Slack said, okay, this gives somebody plausible deniability for anything they are taking in a photo.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's say there's like a photo of you like breaking into a bank, like, oh, like Google Magic Editor did that. I wasn't actually there. And I know that's like a bit of a stretch, and like you can
that's
Photoshop.
literally. Did you see the story about Elon Musk saying like, was it comments he's made? You know, it's like, oh, that could have been deepfaked. That could have been deepfaked, even though we know it was you.
Right. He said it in a public interview setting in front of hundreds of people, but he's like, yeah, maybe it was deepfaked.
Yeah. So nothing is real anymore, and this certainly contributes to the lack of certainty around reality at this point. I mean, you could do a lot of this stuff in Photoshop right now, if you had the skills for it. What this does is basically make it like a one-touch thing that's AI
automates it for people who like haven't learned how to do Photoshop.
Yep. So yeah, the nature of reality is gone. I mean, you could argue like that's always the thing with the photos. Like you're always editing, you're always like fine tuning. I do think like this is fundamentally changing things. So again, what does this mean for society? We don't know.
I mean, my response is like an old man response, I suppose, because you're right. Like obviously we've been able to do this in Photoshop, but there just feels, I just don't like the idea of like people who like just like, I'm going on taking pictures and I'm just gonna like make them better arbitrarily. Like what does better mean in this case? Oh, like the sky wasn't blue enough, make it bluer, you know, like I don't know, it just feels
kind of already do that. This is a lot of things. Also, in other Google AI news, Bard is going off the wait list in 180 countries. I don't think Bard was ever really on a wait list, to be honest. Like when they launched that thing, I signed up for the wait list, and like 2 minutes later, I was let into Bard. So I don't think there was as much demand as Google is pretending there is.
I hadn't bothered, but that's interesting. I tried it this morning. I asked it some ridiculous questions that were inspired by somebody I saw on Twitter a couple months ago, asking Bing about their budget, and they were saying they had a $3,000 need for cheese. They had to spend $3,000 a month on cheese, and it was hurting their ability to pay their rent. And they had a good conversation with Bing about how to do that. So I was asking Bard about what should I do if I only bring in $3,500 a month and want to spend it all on cheese. And I didn't get any great responses, but it was kind of fun. But I don't, again, know what I would do with this on like a normal day-to-day basis.
I think you guys spend some more time with it, and everybody. It is funny, like within just a few months of this stuff existing, so many people are putting in their like Twitter profiles. Oh yeah, I'm a generative script leader. I'm very good at generating stuff, and like this did not exist 4 months ago. You're not an expert in it.
Yeah. Now it's a job.
God. And all the AI people, all the people who are big into crypto are now switching into AI in their profiles. And it's just, there's a lot. There's a lot. Also coming to Bard is Adobe Firefly image generation. That is sort of like, that's a thing where you can type in a bit of text and get an image out of it.
So it's similar to Dolly 2, et cetera,
similar
right?
to Dolly 2, and what was the other one? There's another one that's very
popular. I
popular.
can't remember the name right now.
Yep. And sorry, live stream, my video is going in and out. I don't know what's going on there, but let me turn my camera off. Let me just do this real quick and turn it back on. I'm using a Camlink 4K, and that is sometimes leading to issues.
Midjourney is the other one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, it's just me now. Good times.
It's just Nate. Well, you have me talking.
So yeah, while we're trying to figure that stuff out, my question that I put in like the little production chat was whether or not Google is going to have to build something into the metadata of whether or not or to mention whether or not a photo has been changed somehow.
Magic edited. That seems like a smart idea.
Edited or something, because remember how like right around when that new iOS, I forget which version of iOS came out, that allowed you to edit your text messages.
Those
were lawyers that were saying like, oh my God, like, we need to build in like a little fail-safe, something that says like the history of whatever your edited messages were, because text messages are used so often in court that you really need a full history of what a person said.
This was the same thing about editable tweets as well too. So the power you could do around that. Anyway, okay, I think my camera is good, so I'm just gonna keep going from that section. Let's skip the Google Maps thing. That's not super interesting.
Yep.
It was just a cool little preview thing. Rounding
Should we
out.
talk?
Yep. Let me just kick off right there. What I'm highlighting. Rounding out the rest of the stuff from Google I/O, Google officially announced the Pixel 7a, which is their new $500, $499 mid-range phone. It runs the same chip as the $1799 Pixel Fold. Again, that chip seems suspect. I don't know.
Chew on that.
Chew on that for such an expensive phone. It has a Tensor G2, a 90 hertz display. It is, I believe, $50 more than the last A series. It's $100 less than the smaller Pixel 7. It seems like a nice mid-range phone. It seems like Sam really liked it on the site. So what do you think, Nate?
I mean, I think that they've been really consistently awesome on the A series. Like, I would probably buy the larger, I'd probably buy the regular Pixel 7 Pro if I was going to buy a Pixel phone, and I would have bought it in the fall. But for people who like don't care about getting the latest and greatest, this is like most of the latest and greatest, and it's like a really good price. You don't need
the Pixel 7 basically, because this is close enough to the Pixel 7 and cheaper. It just seems very nice. Like, this is kind of what I want to see more from Google and Pixel phones in general. So that seems nice. Google also gave us more details about the Pixel tablet, which they previewed. What was it, last fall?
A year? No, they first mentioned it a year ago. Exactly.
A year ago?
Yep. Oh yeah.
Man.
And they said at I/O it was coming in 2023, but still, long time ago.
Sorry, we are having another technical issue. My phone is away. My phone is away from the static, but I don't know what is going on.
I'm just gonna turn mine off. Actually, screw it.
Yeah, turn it off. I don't have any other radio-seeking device out here that's doing that noise. Okay. I don't know what's going on with the video thing, so that's fun. This may involve like just completely unplugging it from my computer, but for now I will just pop it back on Zoom, okay? Let me just finish this up. Okay, so we learned about the Pixel tablet a year ago. It wasn't that impressive until they showed off this feature where it has a stand that doubles as a speaker, and you can magnetically just slap it on that stand and basically turn it into a smart display.
Yeah.
And to me, that's interesting. Not like, a standalone tablet from Google, especially after they've been so bad with tablets for so long. Not interesting. This thing, though, I could see getting one of these for my kitchen or some other area where it would be nice to have a display on hand that I could, Chromecast to or, shout commands to, but also pop off and use as a tablet. So that's cool. I think we all agree. Everybody was like really excited about this Engadget. Probably the first Android tablet we were all like, I would probably get one of those. What do you think, Nate?
I agree. I like tablets. I like messing around with different form factors like you do. And this one seemed interesting because, almost everybody who's doing a tablet at this point, whether it's the iPad or the OnePlus Pad that I just reviewed or Samsung's Galaxy Tabs, they all make connectivity with a keyboard and or stylus a really important part of the package. Google does not have a keyboard or stylus, though you can use a universal stylus with it. So they're like not making this thing about productivity, which I think is smart given Android's limitations in that department.
Let's just pretend we don't do that. Yeah.
Right. Instead, it's a like device for using around the home. I could definitely see, like you said, having a stand in the kitchen. You slap it on there. You could have another one somewhere else in the house. You slap it there. The screen is much nicer than what you're going to get on the existing Nest Hub devices, right? It's like a 2560 by 1600 display, something like that. So really nice. Big, high resolution. I want to hear the speaker dock. I'm curious to hear how it sounds. But my guess is that it's going to be good enough for most people. And
it looks big. Like it
is.
You could judge a speaker by its size, and it's basically the width of this tablet, and that's a good sign for at least better than like one of the small little like Nest devices or a plain Echo. And the other thing is, it's $500. I don't think Google can ever be like, here is our iPad competitor, and it's $400, because why in the hell would you ever invest in that? Like, because Android is not good for big screens, really. If you want a big screen experience, you got more tablet apps on iPad OS and everything. It makes more sense to stick with Apple. But now I'm like, I was considering getting another iPad because the one I have for my daughter right now getting kind of old. The space is just not enough. I want to upgrade one so I can bring her stuff on the road more easily and download things. Now I'm kind of considering this. I don't know if it's worth it. Yeah.
As an entertainment device, right? Like if you want to think about it, like, this is something for me to like couch browse, watch videos when I'm traveling or away from the TV. Again, uses the smart hub around the house. You could pick up, like I said, second speaker dock. And they did some smart things with the software so that like when it's docked, anybody can still access like home controls. So let's say you want to adjust your lights or thermostat or everything, you can do that without having to like sign in. It also supports multiple users. So again, if it's sitting around the house and like you want to grab it or your wife wants to grab it or your kid wants to grab it, they can do so and not like have to like be inside of your apps. You can keep your information separate, which I think is really smart for a device that feels easy to share, right? Whereas Apple has consistently made it so the iPad is your device and no one else's.
That's very weird. They really need to get like multi-user authentication and profiles and stuff going on iPad. This thing looks like an iPad when it's off, when it's just like on its own. So it is funny. It's the year 2023. Google has finally released an iPad. I see people joking and talking about it in our chat. Brian Mitchell points out the Nexus 7 was the peak of Android tablets. I agree. I really like the Nexus 7, and I liked a lot of those Nexus devices, to be honest. But Google never quite knew what to do with the big screens, and it really wasn't until like the Galaxy Note and Samsung was like trying to experiment more with what you could do with Android that that we saw more of that stuff. This thing also runs the Tensor G2. Which is kind of funny. Again, that's in the Pixel 7a. It's in the 1799 Pixel Fold. And it's also the chip
everywhere,
from
baby.
Last year. It's everywhere. It's also the chip from last year, so I don't know how you feel about that, Nate. Like it does
for the
feel
tablet,
like,
it doesn't bother me. I mean, obviously, I haven't used it yet, but I assume that it's performant enough to do everything you need to do here.
And for the 7a, it seems fine. Yeah. But yeah, multitasking on the Fold. Well, the Fold has more RAM, so I guess that is kind of the thing. This looks kind of cool.
I'd like to review it. I don't know who's doing it, but I wouldn't mind doing it if that happens.
This is how we think about things. Yeah,
I'm gonna try and get my hands on one regardless and just put it through the paces.
It seems cool. It does seem cool. I also feel like Apple needs to. It is the simplest thing in the world to just like, hey, here's a speaker dock for the iPad.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Just rip this off. Do what they did here. Yeah.
I mean, Apple has had like hi-fi products before, so just kind of bring it back. But what were you going to say before, Nate?
Just that I was going to say that you must remember years ago that I was using a Pixel C. I think even I bring on the podcast that we were doing back in 2016, 17 to have my notes and stuff. And again, super not ready for prime time.
Can you remind people what the Pixel C was?
Yes, the Pixel C was an Android-based tablet that was like actually gorgeous, like really great hardware. And it came with this cool like magnetic keyboard attachment that was also really pretty good to type on. Android was not at all up to par for what you wanted to do with it, but hardware wise, it was super cool. So I got one just to play around with it and eventually got rid of it because it wasn't good enough, but it was fun. And this like brings me back to that a little bit. So I like the idea of seeing what they can do with it. And I hope that somebody makes a decent keyboard for it because I wouldn't mind trying to do it for like light. You
could just do any Bluetooth keyboard though, right? So
yeah, but I want it to be all like one thing.
All one thing. Just get an iPad.
I have several, so it's kind of, again, this isn't actually going to happen. This is solving no actual problems for me, but I want to try it anyway.
I think a kitchen display is a big thing, and like a tote around the house kind of screen is always useful. One more thing I want to mention from I/O, and there was a whole bunch of news, so go check that all out in Engadget. But Android 14, they showed off more stuff, specifically more customization on the home and lock screens. You could get generative AI pictures and images. You could get like there's like this weird emoji thing somebody did. Like you get a lot of options. That's cool, I guess. Do we know anything else about Android 14?
Not a whole lot in terms of like what it's bringing for like user facing noteworthy features. I mean, obviously the home screen stuff is like a big like thing that people will interact with, but it doesn't like fundamentally change Android, right? So we'll have to see what is going on there. They talked about Android surprisingly minimally, I would say. It was not much of a big deal. It's funny. This event.
One feature I want to call out, they introduced cinematic wallpapers, which uses on-device neural networks to animate your favorite photos. That's kind of cool. I guess that's kind of cool. People on Engadget Slack, we were like sharing around what we do with our home screens. And one thing I really like to do, iOS has this thing where it's just like, hey, featured photos. Just like let me rotate in some featured photos, and I do this thing where it highlights photos for me and also like gives you a blurred version for the actual home screen, so there's like a seamlessness to the design. That's cool. I like it. It also reminds me of like when my kids were younger, and it's nice to see those things pop up. So yeah, I think Android 14 hopefully will have more of that too, in addition to just cinematic wallpapers.
I will say, as a guy who uses an iPhone, I really wish that I had a wallpaper app as good as the one on Android, because they have so many nice options in there, and iPhone gives you like, here are like eight pictures, and you know, obviously they've made it better with like the emoji stuff is fun, the featured photos swapping every day is cool. I actually set that up yesterday after we were talking about that. It's cool because you can be like, oh, show like these specific people, right? So like it doesn't show in like random pictures of randos from a concert, but like here's like your wife or your kids or whatever, or your pets. And you can say like, I want stuff from like the cityscape category and landscape, so it'll like smartly pull in good stuff there. But anyway.
Gotcha. All right. Well, thank you, Nate. You know what, folks? Go to Engadget.com. Check out all of our Google I/O coverage. Sherlyn also did, what was it, the Starline, the holographic thing. Sherlyn did a hands-on with that, but we couldn't get photos because it's hard to take photos of holographs. But
I think they might actually just not let you. I think it was not even an option, actually.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Google was like, no.
They didn't let her, but also you can't physically do it. So that's a whole thing. But check out all of our coverage there. Yeah, and thank you, Nate. We'll be right back. I'll just say, check out all our coverage. Okay, check out all of our Google I/O coverage in Engadget. Let's move on to your review of Zelda, Nate.
Yes.
Let me actually take a pause here, because I do think I think the chat is like bubbling with things, so we should just answer a couple of questions.
Yeah, sure.
Well, we're done with Google.
Sure.
Okay, hello, folks. Amidst all of our tech issues, anything you want to call out, Ben? I see people saying they've ordered the Pixel tablet. I don't blame you. Looks very nice.
Yeah, so I see the DPro9 saying that I don't really understand why I need a tablet in my pocket, but I'm here for it.
And
I
about
think it's
folds,
one of those things, you don't know until you do, but it's also like I kind of see when I would, like, if I want to read a big article or something with like nice designs. One thing I miss reading everything on my phone is like, you know what's great, guys? Magazines. Really nice typography and nice layouts and nice images and stuff. And we did lose a lot of that as we scale down everything to phones. Yeah.
I think someone in chat said something to the effect of, and this might have been about the Pixel tablet, but it could apply to the Fold too. Like, this thing is like a little like digital magazine for your pocket.
It's a magazine replacement.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And then DPro9 was also saying, you think a phone this expensive would have a new camera sensor. Totally valid. I think that what the hardware engineers at Google probably did was like, let's just make sure this thing works, period.
It's also, it is the best camera we've seen on a foldable that's that thin. So they are new camera sensors. It's limited by the actual physical thinness of that device. So yeah. It's disappointing compared to the 7 Pro for sure.
Oh, the physical thinness of the device, because you need to have 2 screens, a whole tablet in your pocket. It all comes back into itself. So I don't know if it's CUD or CUD, like what cows make,
like
what cows
CUD.
chew.
CUD
But I like the idea of a foldable. Still feels like they're a couple of iterations off being worth it. Thinner, less bezels, better software. Then I could maybe commit to a foldable as a phone replacement, which again makes total sense.
Yeah, that tracks.
For me, it's durability. Like, I don't think the thinness is the thing. Like, you kind of need some thickness there to protect those screens and keep everything good when they fall. But we got to make sure, like, okay, this thing should last 3 to 4 years, or more.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I think the thing that you're
about
always saying about like having spent time working as an IT person and knowing where the failure points are is very, very relevant, because the foldy screen is definitely a failure point.
anything that moves is bad, folks. That's basically it. Anything that moves can and will break, and then you're screwed. What if your kid takes that and like bends it in the opposite direction? What does that look like?
Well, that's it. You're done. It's over.
Cud said, yeah, it's like what cows chew. I'm still not sure whether or not that's a joke, but cool for you. I'm just going to call you Cud. And then I think D-Man has maybe the most relevant comment that says that they like the design, but $1,800 is a PS5, a Series X, and a new OLED Switch at the same time.
It's
like there's a lot of stuff that you can get.
It's an iPhone Pro and an iPad Pro all at the same time.
That's crazy.
So,
that's really
the iPhone
crazy.
Pros are now selling for
way.
$999. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Or like 1-bedroom rent in most major cities. Well, okay, sure. Not most major cities, but like cities that aren't New York City.
Cities that aren't New York. I mean, that's basically what I paid my first time in New York. One thing I didn't mention in our chat is
dates
that
you.
Having a foldable also gives you a screen that can like be in front of you and in front of somebody else. And Google did show off this translation thing that's kind of cool, where I think people were talking into it or typing into it, and on the other side was the translated text. So like you could be typing in English and it could on the other side be Spanish if you're trying to send somebody a message or something in another country, and that was
cool.
Kind of cool. I do want to see more of those types of things.
So and I was saying like the main utility that I see for foldables is if you're the sort of person who's like seriously always on the go and you can't find a place to actually like sit down and like type out a few emails on a laptop. You might actually need to have like a couple of different windows open on a big screen. So the thing that I'm thinking about is construction managers. Like a couple of my friends from high school ended up being construction managers. They are literally like always on the job site.
Makes sense.
And it really
Surfaces
helps for
really
them
big with that like group of folks because of how flexible they were.
It also, that's like right there in the wheelhouse of like, I'm a big guy, I got big hands. So hands. You're going to want more screen and more phone. But like, those are the sort of folks that, due to like the fact that they're always moving around, they're always like looking at like, this part of the build and that part of the build, they need to be able to like send some emails from wherever they are. And then also kind of culturally, nobody wants to see the construction manager being the only person sitting down typing at a laptop. So like it has some utility there too.
Yeah, Brian Mitchell says Pixelfold is almost 3 months of rent for them. Very lucky. You're very lucky.
Yeah. Oh my God.
My very first apartment, I think, was $700 a month. So even
but how many people did you share it with?
One other person.
Yeah.
Brian Mitchell,
it was me and my girlfriend, but yeah.
Oh, good. So, Brian Mitchell, can you just tell us, like, generally where do you live? Because that would help us understand how it's 3 months of rent for you.
Quite a lot.
My rent out of college was $600, but I was always splitting it with at least one person.
I mean, then you get a bigger
space. Wait, $600 period?
Well, no. It was like the apartment would be $1,200, but I was living with somebody.
All right.
Yeah, and that was like near Boston though, so like not. I'm
saying mine was $700 before the split.
Right, that's crazy.
For 1 bedroom.
Well, where was this?
That was Amherst, Massachusetts, baby.
Oh,
right
I love
downtown.
Amherst.
It was beautiful. I miss it.
All right.
Okay. Yes, Bryant Mitchell says Mississippi. That explains everything.
Yep.
Even in
We're
Georgia,
not bad-mouthing Mississippi. It's just that rent prices are definitely different there.
Even around Atlanta and Georgia, like rent is insane. Like, yeah. It's crazy. Anyway, I think we can move on. I'll go right.
Let's talk about Zelda because everybody wants to hear about Zelda. I want to hear.
Hell yeah, baby.
Okay, Nate. Should I buy Zelda? What? This seems like a game. We've been waiting for it.
It is a game.
Is it good?
Yes.
I hope.
Yes, it's good, but I had a really, and I didn't get into this too much in the review, so I'm glad I can talk about it here, which is that I knew going into it that I wouldn't finish the game before the review was up. Like, there's not enough time. It's like 100+ hour game if you want to do close to everything. So I was like, all right, I'm going to get as far as I can. And I think.
And how much time did you have with it, Nate?
I spent about 30, maybe 35 hours playing it.
But you had
over the course of about a week and a half.
A week and a half. Okay, that's pretty good. Yeah.
So a good amount of time. And I got really frustrated with it at the beginning because Link is so underpowered and vulnerable. You screw up one thing and you're dead. And that's not unlike how Breath of the Wild was, but I forgot just how dramatic it can be at the start when you only have
baby at the beginning.
You have 3 hearts and no items, and it's rough out there.
And you can go anywhere and encounter huge enemies really quickly. Yeah,
right. There's a gated beginning, much like there is in Breath of the Wild, and then you get to go explore wherever you want. And I I don't want to say that like I diverged from the path that the game was giving me, but like when I went back a little later, I was like, oh, there's a couple more like intro level things that I could have done to like power myself up a little more. But I was getting impatient, and I was like, oh, I need to like move this along and start getting into some of the bigger dungeons and so forth. And it was just tough. But then once I kind of slowed down and accepted the limitations that I would only get to see so much of the game before publishing the review, it was a little better. But there are still like, you know, I'm like I said, 30 something hours into the game, and you know, there's a shrine. There's dozens of shrines, just like there are in Breath of the Wild, where you can, you know, solve some small puzzles, do a few little battles, and then get like the little medallion. It gives you a travel point. You can eventually turn those into pieces of heart, so you're less weak.
I like the shrines, by the way. Like people complained that that Breath of the Wild didn't have many dungeons. It had just like what the big creatures and everything. But the shrines were always like, they gave me a pang of joy whenever I'd encounter one somewhere. It's like, oh, something.
And almost all the time, you know, they take like 5 or 10 minutes tops, and you get that nice little hit when you figure out the puzzle. That said, again, ran into some super frustrating ones, including one where they have ones where you go in and it takes away all your weapons and armor, and you can only use the found items around, which can be cool because it's, again, like you're solving this puzzle. But you know, this one I went into, there was like 8 really powerful robots to battle, and I had no shield. There was no shield to find, and I was like, this is just stupid. Like, I died like a dozen times, and it just like wasn't fun, and it felt like something that should have been play tested and fixed. And I think like,
did you encounter them earlier than you should have, maybe, or
no? Because again, it takes away your items, so it doesn't matter
your
how.
Hearts. Did you need?
Yeah, I had 10 hearts, but with no armor, no shield, you get hit twice, you're dead.
I cannot wait to see Dan Cooper at Engadget just wrote up a piece that he finally gave Breath of the Wild some time, and he was
6 years later.
6 years later. Listen, there are people on our site who have not even played the game, but Dan kept running into things like he can't parry well, he can't do the skill-based things. It seems like this game may lean more onto that, so
a little bit. So but I'll put aside, that's like my personal, you know, frustration. I'm curious to see if other people have a similar time with that. Somebody mentioned earlier though that you know, there's also no guides out there, or YouTubes or anything I can turn to for help if I get stuck. So I was kind of on my own.
The glory of being a game reviewer is that you got no help other than maybe your friends, if you know the reviewers.
So putting aside like those frustrations, I would say that it's a game that feels, you know, if you played Breath of the Wild, you'll immediately feel at home in terms of like the graphical style is the same, the controls are the same. A lot of the like game design is the same in terms of like you can go anywhere you want, but there's kind of 4 major regions to explore, which lead to the 4 major dungeons, which are analogous to the, you know, the divine beasts from Breath of the Wild. And there's lots of shrines in between there. But what they added on this time is both the sky and the underworld. And those are totally new areas.
I have not heard about an underworld, so okay.
You haven't? No, this is a huge part of it.
Okay.
So the underworld quest line kind of goes in parallel with the like more traditional Breath of the Wild style quest line. You have to like go into all these chasms have opened up around Hyrule, and there's a new thing called the gloom in these. And so if you get hit by an enemy, not only do you lose a heart, the heart breaks and you can't refill it.
Oh no!
Until you either like, you know, take a potion or, you know, find a waypoint where you can charge back up. So that's an interesting little you know, wrinkle in the gameplay, and the environment also feels completely different. Obviously, you're underground. It's mostly
is it a little Dark Soulsy, almost like a little more punishing than usual for a Zelda. I don't know.
There can be moments like that. Some of the like the really you know, again, you run up against some like very large and intense monsters who can do serious damage pretty frequently.
That's cool. How are the power, because we also have other news we'll need to get to, Nate, but how are you enjoying the new powers? This is a game that gives you the ability to like float up through things.
Yes, the new
vehicles.
The new powers are the thing that makes this feel totally distinct. And people are going to have a blast messing around with this if you're the kind of person who loves to like screw around with stuff. Basically, in Breath of the Wild, there was a power called magnesis. You can move magnetic objects around. In this game, you can move almost anything you want, and you can stick almost anything you want together. So if there's a board laying around and then there's 4 wheels near it, you can make yourself a little car, which is great. And, you know, you can stick a fan on the back and it'll propel itself around. And there's, Yeah, there's tons of stuff like that. You can, take a little flaming, like this object that emits flames, stick it to your shield, and now you've got a flame shield. When you hold it up, flames burst out of it. Or you can take like an ice lizard's tail and attach it to your sword, and now you've got a sword that can freeze things. The interesting thing,
like a equipment that's broken, right? You can kind of rejuvenate it and give it
well,
new life by doing this,
yes,
right?
yeah. There's the like ability to like fuse objects, and then you can stick stuff to your weapons. And the weapon stuff is basically a requirement because all the weapons you find around have been decayed by Ganondorf's reemergence, so they're all underpowered. So you're basically required, right? You're required to like but when monsters drop horns or whatever, you can like stick a horn onto your sword, and now it's more powerful. For example, it's basically required to do this, which like got a little old to me because like I just want to find a good weapon and use it for a while, not have to think about these combos. And of course, everything still breaks, which is super annoying.
Can you combine like two swords into each other? Or something?
No, it can be like a sword plus like another item.
Okay.
You can't like stick a sword onto a shield or anything like that, for example. But the possibilities are pretty wide open.
I heard about bombs being stuck to shields, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah. And it comes into play also with arrows. So like in the previous games, you could get fire arrows. Now there's no fire arrow, but you can take a fire fruit and stick it on your arrow, and you're good to go there. Cool. So collecting resources is interesting because before a lot of this, you'd be like, I'm just going to sell these and get some rupees. Now you have to decide if you're going to keep them because you need to augment your arsenal versus sell them and get some money to buy armor, for example.
Or you could make food with stuff before.
Yep, that's all there too. Yep.
So that's all there, but I do like the idea of combining things. How was the performance for you, Nate? Like this thing, the Switch is aging hardware, and even it is. Breath of the Wild like really was kind of sluggish when the Switch launched.
Yeah.
It seems they're being even more ambitious in terms of environments and capabilities here. Like, did you notice any slowdown? And did you only play in handheld, or did you dock too to like get a little more power?
I did handheld. I did dock. I would say that it plays mostly like Breath of the Wild. I'd say I hit a few more frame rate drops than in that game. So like the underworld, the rendering is like there's like so much going on there, like texturally and stuff in the air and whatnot, that it gets a little bit intense if there's a ton of enemies on the screen. Again, like none of it was to the point where I was like, oh, this is a problem, but I was like, they're pushing this thing like to the absolute limit.
This
and
is old hardware. This is almost a decade old, the hardware in this machine. So
right. And like I think the physics stuff, since now you can, like I said, stick any item to any other item, that's like there's just like a lot, the physics engine is doing a lot more this time, I feel like, and that can like get a little hinky too. It's hard to imagine where Nintendo goes with this hardware from here.
Oh man, like I don't know how much longer. We'll talk a bit about this in the news. Like it doesn't seem like new hardware is coming anytime soon.
Right.
The other weird thing is like this game leaked online, and if you go to the dark corners of the internet, you can find a copy of this game and you can play it in an emulator. And if you have a good GPU, honestly, if you have like even a basic PC like graphics card these days, you could play this game in much better quality than you can on the Switch. To me,
I wonder how it works on a Steam Deck.
Well, you can play Breath of the Wild on a Steam Deck. There are videos of that out there, so nothing is stopping you. And the Steam Deck's hardware is much, much faster than the Switch is too. So Nintendo's in a really weird place, right? Where this like prestige games, a $70 game, runs the worst on its own hardware.
Yep.
I don't know. And that's true of like a lot of games coming out, but it's very odd. I don't blame something I've been thinking about, like, if I'm going to buy this game, but maybe I want to play on my computer too, just to like get that comparison going. So
and I will say, like, Nintendo, obviously their art direction is fabulous. They always make beautiful worlds. They get the most out of their hardware, but I can't help but wonder, like, what would this game look like if it looked more like Horizon Forbidden West, which is like a similarly open world kind of exploration. You can go anywhere you see, more or less. I'm like, that game is gorgeous. And I understand, like, maybe Nintendo's never going to do a photorealistic Zelda style, but the environments, the like sun, the sky, the land, all looks just unbelievable in that game. Even on the PS4, it looks amazing, right? So like, I can't help but wonder, like, how good would a Zelda with that kind of power look? It would look awesome.
It would look awesome. I mean, what was the GameCube Zelda, the one Twilight Princess, the one people like, where they tried to go a little more mature too, because people responded badly to Wind Waker. Right. They were very dumb. back then.
Yep.
But then Twilight Princess was kind of dull and boring, but they did try to go for some more of that style.
Yeah.
I don't know. Nintendo's one of my favorite companies, but they can do crazy things because they are Nintendo, and nobody else can like do these decisions that they are.
They just do what they want to do, and we have to deal with it. And sometimes it's great, and sometimes it's a bummer. But all that aside, like, yeah, if you liked Breath of the Wild at all, you will like this game. There's a lot to explore. I feel like people will probably just start like getting into it and like spending dozens of hours just making crazy contraptions, and there's going to be some really funny stuff like on the streams with that, I bet. I'm less of
people who have not played Breath of the Wild, Nate.
Yeah,
should they just jump into this?
Can
you just do it?
Yeah, the story is so
continues,
right. The story is it is a direct sequel, but like it brings in so much new stuff and more or less kind of ignores what happened in the previous game to a degree that like if you're not super concerned with it, you could easily just jump right in. But I think Breath of the Wild is still so very good that it's worth playing. The last thing I would say about like building the contraptions and whatnot is like I think some people are gonna have a ton of fun doing that. The good news is that if you don't care about that as much, like I'm not the kind of person who's gonna like screw around with that forever. It guides you well. Like they'll be like, okay, here's a place where you need to make a certain thing. The pieces for it are around, are not hard to find. You can do it and move on with your life. So like you're not required to like, dream up this like crazy new way to like get across the river for the most part. It'll nudge you in the right direction. So,
but it seems like it will also reward you if you experiment a little bit too, just from
that's fair
videos. So
I'm
looking forward to that. This is the thing. Like I moved from New York 3 years ago. Never plugged my Switch dock back in. Because handheld is the way, really. And when you're dealing with kids, like I never really have time to like sit down and play a game unless it's on my computer. I think I'm ready to plug that dock back in to get.
I would do that and like use the Pro controller because it's just much nicer than doing the Joy-Cons for sure.
I did. I see your picture with the Joy-Con separated, and I did have to wonder, like, no one's gonna play Zelda like that.
No, this is just so the picture is an homage to the picture Aaron took on our first review. So I wanted to like get that in there.
It's funny because back then we were like, oh man, you could separate like the controllers, you could do all this stuff with it, and now we're just so jaded. It's like just don't. nobody will do that.
Just let me play it.
Just let me play the game. Okay. Yep. Thank you so much, Nate. Let's move on to some other news. And actually related to this, Nintendo's earnings were this week, and there was an interesting pull out of that. Nintendo executives basically confirmed that they're not expecting to release any new hardware until April of next year. So that means no Switch Pro, no Switch.
They said that specifically, huh? April of next year.
So they said within this current period. So I'm looking at Polygon's coverage, and Nintendo President Shintaro Furukawa said it has not factored new hardware into its current forecast, which stretches out to March 31st, 2024.
So their fiscal year, basically, right? They're saying no hardware in this period. Yeah,
indeed. That is a very roundabout way of saying no hardware. Which maybe sad if you wanted a Switch Pro later this year. I bought the Switch OLED late last year because I'm an idiot and I love Nintendo, so. I just bought it for Zelda. I want
and it's going to be a great Zelda machine.
It's going to, and there are like special versions of that too, right? Later Zelda and everything.
Yeah, I wish that I could justify that.
I feel like for the people who want to celebrate a new Zelda and everything, that Switch OLED looks really tight. Like it looks really good. That screen is amazing. So I would not blame you for hopping over to that thing. I can't wait for Zelda. Oh man.
One day. But yeah, the Switch thing. I mean, I feel like the Switch Pro is one of those like rumors that just like took on a life of its own. Well, it took on a life of its own without it ever actually being substantiated in any serious way.
Enough people reported it, Nate, where I'm like, everything was weird over the past couple of years. I'm sure that's product probably existed, and then they were like, well, you need new chips for this. And then
that's a really good point.
Those chips don't exist. We do have OLED panels.
Yep.
It seemed like maybe a negotiation at some point. Like I could have easily seen going almost a decade with the same hardware which at launch was already slow. I don't think Nintendo intended for that to happen, but it's the sheer power of their game design and their market force that they can make people keep buying these things.
Yeah, you know what?
Yeah.
I forgot about COVID, and like it's entirely possible that there was major effects there in terms of what they planned.
Basically, they forecasted that they're only going to be selling 15 million Switches over the next year, and like they're like, because of all these things, because the Switch has been out for a while, like we don't expect to see that much. It was just kind of a warning to investors. I think the Switch Pro itself as an idea doesn't make sense anymore, but we'll probably see a Switch successor, actually.
Switch 2.
Switch 2.
Maybe 2025, probably.
Maybe, tease it next year, release it in 2025, call it the Super Switch, because it's right there. It's right there for you. I also think they have to keep up with the sort of like hybrid portable design, but
that's true. They're going to get a little bit of a push from all that stuff coming out now.
It could be that when the Switch initially launched, people were saying like, oh yeah, when you dock it, you actually get more power, which is true. You get consistent power, and like the resolution, I believe, and the frame rate is a little more consistent, so you get a little jolt. It's not hard to imagine a future Switch that is really good portably, and you plug into that dock, and it just like sucks in a little more power through something else like that.
Yeah, they could make the dock more than just a piece of plastic that connects to a TV. Like give it some horsepower there.
Give it some horsepower. Could totally see it being like a legit thing, but also given the rise of like gaming portable, PC portable gaming things right now, like they could certainly do a lot with the handheld itself. It's gonna be an exciting time, folks. I mean, let us know, what do you want to see in the next Switch? Podcast Engadget.com. Also, in other news, Roku unveiled a $99 smart home monitoring system. This one just came out of nowhere because Roku is a set-top box company. They started making speakers. Earlier this year, they announced they're going to be making their own TVs, so that's a big move. And now, smart home monitoring. Okay, I guess. What do you think, Nate?
It's just like, I think I can see the progression of them becoming a like smart device company beyond just like the traditional Roku stuff, but like I'm not sure who's asking for this.
This is co-developed with Wise. I think it's one of those,
so they're a legit company.
Like, Wise is pretty legit. Were they the ones that were hacked? I forget, somebody was like hacked really badly lately too. So, hey, go look into that. But
they were all hacked.
Do you use any sort of like? You live in the city, Nate. Like, do you use any sort of like monitoring or alarm system? Really?
I do not. Nope.
That's surprising. So as soon as I moved to Georgia, what I noticed is I don't have like an apartment now. I have like a house, and there is stuff like I don't know what's going on in the backyard. I don't know what's going on in all these doors. I started visualizing like all the entry points and everything. So I have, door sensors. I have a couple of things. I'm paying for alarm service, but we never actually turn it on. Mm-hmm. I guess something at this price, if you just want alerts of like when things are happening, when windows are open, when doors are open, it seems kind of useful. So interesting move for Roku. And kind of related to all the AI stuff, there is a great story at restofworld.org, which is a really interesting site. Like, they've been doing tech stories from around the world. They have a story about India's religious AI chatbots are speaking in the voice of God and basically condoning violence. And this is just another thing I want to bring up to highlight like the potential dangers of like AI chatbots. They're claiming wisdom based on the Bhagavad Gita, which is very, very famous religious text. They frequently go way off script, and to me this seems really dangerous, especially in India, where there is like Hindu fundamentalism is like a thing that is there. The current political party is basically, that is the mentality there, and that's led to a lot of violence against Islamic folks and basically anybody else. I believe Christians in India too are facing persecution because of this. So not a great thing. I just want to point this out there, because when we say, hey, we don't know what's going to happen with AI, it's not just like, I'm afraid they're going to take our jobs, and they likely will. I'm not afraid it's going to become like a super sentient being that will destroy us all. I'm afraid that people will talk to these things and be like, oh, you're a bot that sounds, good, and you're speaking the voice of God, and then therefore I can listen to you. There's one example they list. The user asks, is killing justified when protecting Dharma? And The answer from the bot is, as a Christian, I believe in upholding the principles of Dharma, which includes protecting the innocent and ensuring justice. However, the act of killing should always be the last resort and only used in extreme circumstances. So, kind of a warning, but
It's
also
not a no.
It's not a no. It's like, well, when push comes to shove, this AI bot says kill. Kind of terrifying. Check out the story at Rest of World, and honestly, check out that place in general. I'm really digging their stories.
Yeah, I was going to say that, like, I don't have a lot to add to this particular story, but they're pretty new, right? I think in the last year or so, and they are doing a lot of really interesting reporting for sure. Really worth a read. Yep.
I dig it. Like, almost every one of their stories are interesting. So yeah, let's move
like
on.
I just went to the homepage and there's a story called "The Capybara Influencer Revolt," and like, yep, that made me want to click on that. I will read that.
Yeah, my daughter is obsessed with capybaras. I own a capybara shirt now because of that.
They're having a moment.
They're having a moment on TikTok because they're cool, they're chill, and we all want to just be a capybara. We want to be a chill capybara. Let's talk about some stories around Engadget. Actually, just one I want to bring up. Carissa Bell wrote about Blue Sky having a moment. Blue Sky is the Twitter alternative backed by Jack Dorsey, but he doesn't lead it. It's a decentralized social network that is still very small. People are getting invited now. I just got an invite last week, actually, and I spent some time there. But it does seem like a lot of people who were big on Twitter, including Drill, are there. And it seems like a lot of the weirdos and really interesting folks, the people I enjoy following on Twitter, a lot of them are popping up there. A lot of media folks are there. And as I feel like every one of these services is just like a different party, right? What party do you want to go to? Do you want to go to the Mastodon party? Yeah, what's up?
I think Blue Sky sounds like the good party, and I'll just say it also sounds a little bit like the capybara of social media right now, which makes me interested.
A little bit. It's a little weird. Probably the
capybaras are a little weird.
A little weird. They're a little chill. The alligators don't attack them because everybody loves capybaras. If you've been on TikTok long enough, you probably know the song because it's everywhere. But the thing is, like, when I go to Mastodon, I'm in like the computer lab. I'm surrounded by the tech dorks and the people who believe in open source and who will like flame you to hell if you post an image without alt text. So it's very, very like a thing. It's a very specific type of thing. Blue Sky, meanwhile, I'm looking at the trending tab. I'm like, all I see are butts. All like basically on the most popular tab is just like people posting their butts. And I'm like,
wow, that's just something.
Things are just popping off on Blue Sky. Also, there's a bit of an intrigue there too, because it's really hard to get an invite. And, thanks to one of my friends who was able to like pass one along, you also don't get invites immediately. It takes like time. I think you have to be on for several weeks and active to actually get invites to pass out. So that exclusivity is probably giving it a bit of a sheen, but ultimately, it's just Twitter. It is basically just Twitter. Again, the same interface. No ads. It's a little cleaner.
But that's kind of what we all want, right? Like, I'm like, Twitter without ads, without the Nazis. Like, it's like I'm in.
Twitter back in time. There is content moderation, but there's a lot of stuff we don't know. There was that controversy about like you basically giving up your content to Blue Sky, and I believe one of the people in charge was like, "Hey guys, we picked like a basically out of the box EULA, and they're gonna like refine that." So. It doesn't sound like they're trying to steal all your content. I'm interested in Blue Sky. I'm certainly spending more time there. I'm basically hopping between Blue Sky, Twitter, and Mastodon these daing. And
that sounds like a lot of work.
It's, and when I have a little downtime, instead of like spending all my time on Twitter, I'm just like, checking out what's over here, popping in over there.
I maintain my comments.
It's a lot of work, but we got to see where the internet is moving. Let's move on to what we're working on. And Nate, anything you want to bring up in terms of like work or things you want to shout out?
No, I mean, like, honestly, the Zelda thing has sucked up my life, that and IO for the last 2 weeks, getting ready for IO. So please read my Zelda review if you're interested, is what I would say. That is my big thing for the moment.
Are you going to be taking a break from Zelda, or are you just going to keep going?
I would like to keep going with it. I think you get some momentum. You kind of like, I don't like to forget what I was doing in a game that's big. So I want to try and keep it going for a bit. I don't know if I'm gonna like make a hard push to finish it anytime soon, but I want to like keep chipping away. It's my
Keep that momentum going. Like my thing with games is like I it's basically like sometimes it's like a buffet. It's like I take a little bit of this, I'm gonna play a little bit, a couple hours of this, then I don't have time to go back to that game for months. And when I go back to it, it's like I don't know how anything works here.
No, I hate it when that happens, because I'm like, I might as well just start over at that point if I don't remember what I was doing or like where I was going. And
yeah, totally. Okay, well, I am going to be working on a review of the Blackberry movie, which I hear is very good.
You haven't seen it yet?
That soon, yeah.
Okay.
I hear very good things. I'm also working on a piece about EVs. I've been talking about this for a while. I got to talk with a good journalist / researcher around the dangers of big cars and maybe alternatives to big EVs.
I would like to read this very much. I hate big cars.
Go look at David Zipper, because he's written a lot at The Atlantic and elsewhere, and I talked with him a little bit. Couldn't get a good recording because he was actually like on his bike as he was talking to me, so I appreciate that interview, but it's not like podcast worthy. Basically, this all comes off from me spending time with the Rivian R1S, which is a beautiful SUV, but it's so big, and I'm like, 800 horsepower in a vehicle this big?
What?
Yeah.
That's
I don't know
terrifying.
Who needs this. It's terrifying, and also that's what we're selling now. And I feel a lot of conflicted feelings about this. So
that's obscene.
I'm working on a piece about that. Yeah. Any pop culture picks from you this week, Nate?
Yeah, well, I will say I mentioned Horizon Forbidden West earlier. Obviously, the game has been out for a year now, but the Burning Shores expansion dropped a few weeks ago. I am really digging it. I like having a reason to dive back into that world. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful game. It just looks so awesome.
You're gonna hate this, Nate. I played 30 minutes of the new Horizon, not the DLC, but the game.
Forbidden West, yeah.
Yeah, Forbidden West.
Did you finish? Did you finish Zero Dawn?
No.
What?
I don't know what it is about this game. Like, I don't know if it's the combat or the way the storytelling works or something. Like, it really disengages me from it. So I gotta give this thing another chance at some point.
I mean, I think that Zero Dawn is one of the best sci-fi stories
I've read about what happened
that I've come across, and I think the reveals and the way it built. I just thought, like, storytelling wise, like I think it's hard to tell a good story in an open world game. I think they did a great job. If you follow like the main quest and the way they unfold stuff, like, just great. And then I think the way that they just develop the different cultures and the different worlds around there, like, I don't know, I just love everything about it. It's a top 10 game of mine from the last decade. Easy.
I know. I remember you loving it, and I also think you are the big budget games from Sony are catnip for you, Nate. So
they are. Yep.
That's just how it goes. I wish it was smoother. I wish like the combat was better. I wish the storytelling was a little more rich for me. But you know what? Maybe I'll give it another chance at some point. I want to bring up something that I'm watching. It is called Bupkis. It's the new Pete Davidson sitcom, sort of kind of like a drama.
I've seen commercials for that, so I'm interested in hearing what you think because it seems so weird to me.
It's weird. It's on Peacock. It is yet another Pete Davidson project about Pete Davidson's life, which follows The King of Staten Island, which was the Judd Apatow movie. I thought that movie was fine. But this is directly relating to Pete Davidson as who he is right now, as a famous comedian man who lives, in his mother's basement in Staten Island. And it's very funny, even though the mystery of Pete Davidson still kind of eludes me. Like, I think he's perfectly fine on SNL. I'm not part of the Pete Davidson fan club, but the show is really good, mainly because of the people around him. Edie Falco plays his mother. Joe Pesci, coming out of retirement, basically, plays his grandfather. And there's just like a great series of like guest stars and people who pop up too. Brad Garrett is a major character. That's the brother from Everybody Loves Raymond, and Ray Romano actually appears too. So I don't know how they balance that out. But freaking Al Gore is in the show at one point. Jon Stewart is here. Bobby Cannavale plays his uncle. Just like an amazing cast of people around him. It's really funny. It's really raunchy too. Like, there's some really funny stuff. Don't watch this one with your folks. Sometimes I recommend shows and I'm like, I got to give you the warning. At least this first episode, maybe don't watch it with your parents. But it's funny, it's heartfelt, and it presents situations which I have never seen before in some comedies. So to me, that if you're doing something different, to me, that's pretty notable. So that's Bupkis on Peacock, and it's worth checking out.
I like the idea. I'm just slightly burnt out on shows where famous people play slightly weird, different versions of themselves.
This is not different at all. This is Pete Davidson playing Pete Davidson.
But he doesn't literally live with his mother.
He does.
Does he?
He does. The whole story about why do I know this? But the story is like he was living there, before he joined SNL, and then once he started making money, he just renovated his mom's basement. So he lives in that renovated apartment in his mom's basement.
Okay, well that makes it a little, but it's still not. It's
It's still his mom's basement.
Right.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I mean, he has places elsewhere, but I'm pretty sure that is like his the real place where he lives. The man is a mystery. Also everybody throwing themselves at him. Yeah, there's a lot there's a lot of mystery around Pete Davidson. Check out Bupkis. I think it is genuinely funny. And I'll wrap it up here. Thanks, folks. That's it for this week. Our theme music is by game composer Dil North. Our outro music is by our very own managing editor, Terrence O'Brien. The podcast is produced by Ben Ellman. You can find me online at Devindra on Twitter, at Devindra at Mastodon.social, and I don't know what the hell my Blue Sky thing is. If you just type Devindra, my username is at Devindra on Blue Sky, so if you're there, you can find me there. Where can we find you, Nate?
I'm still tweeting, albeit infrequently, at Nate Ingram, and I have yet to really get Blue Sky and Mastodon going, but I really should check out Mastodon until I get the Blue Sky
invite. You should play with Mastodon. I do think the federated whole idea of decentralizing social networks is probably the way we're going to move forward, and we're certainly going to talk more about that, folks. Email us at podcast@engadget.com, leave us a review on iTunes, and subscribe on anything that gets podcasts. Thanks, folks. We're out. Let me do that again. I think I stumbled on that. Hold on. Thanks, folks. We're out. Let's go.
Okay. So I do think that I have to issue a correction. I pretty clearly remember a Weekend Update segment where it says that Pete bought a house and now his mom lives with him. He is the primary owner of the house, but he might still live in the basement.
He still lives with his mom. He still lives with his mom.
Okay, so... Yeah. Can you imagine the tri-state area energy, but also like he's living his famous person life? So let me get far away from the mic because I need to yell for a second. Ma, don't come downstairs. Kim is here.
Yeah. Oh God.
You're so pleased with yourself.
He probably has another entrance. I don't know.
I think he owns a ferry, says Mark Dell.
Oh, no, he absolutely does own a ferry. So he and Colin Jost went in on buying an old Staten Island ferry, and they're trying to find a way to turn it into some kind of restaurant or comedy club or something like that.
I'd like to know what Terrence thinks about this.
Our very own Staten Island resident, Terrence O'Brien, loves the ferry because the ferry is like a chill commute for him back and forth.
It's like a capybara.
It is like a capybara. You get a beer, you just hang out. Yeah. Cool. So what is going on in chat? I see people are talking about Pete Davidson.
Yeah.
Okay. I do know a lot about Pete. This is what happens. Like when somebody becomes big to the point where they infiltrate your psyche, I'm like, I'm trying to get away from this. And yet the information still comes to me. That's what's happened with Pete Davidson. I do like his...
Like Taylor Swift. You just can't avoid it.
I have avoided Taylor Swift, though.
I did some specific...
I have avoided the music.
Oh, yeah, that's easier to do. But I did some strategic...
It was easier to do because you only lived in Georgia for like the last 3 years or so. If you were living in Georgia for the last...
Georgia? I mean, she was big in Brooklyn, too.
Yes, no. Taylor Swift was big in Brooklyn when she went pop. If you were living in Georgia when she was country, she would have been unavoidable.
I did see that video people were posting about there is a metro service, there is a rail service in Atlanta, and there's this viral video going around of like people on the train, just like normal commuters, and behind them is like a wave of zombies because it's a wave of Taylor Swift fans coming out of the concert.
Yes, just a wave of
endless wave, and people are like, no,
some of the whitest folks that you've ever seen.
It is. It was certainly a tidal wave of that, but people rushing in, like a lot of sorority girls, it looked like just rushing to get onto the train because down here you never actually take the train unless you're going to Atlanta for something. So they're going to like where their cars are parked in the suburban like lots and stuff. So just kind of funny to see. Check that out, I'm sure you'll find it somewhere. All right.
So
folks.
Franz Wagner, I mean, we're not talking about tech stuff, but Franz
Yeah.
Wagner also mentioned Lil Dicky's show Dave on FX. There's a lot of this stuff.
I hear a lot of good stuff about Dave. Yeah.
I think it started with Louis, and then it went to like Curb Your Enthusiasm, and like 4 or 5
Wasn't
other
Curb before
shows.
Louis? Curb was on forever. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
true.
Curb's
That's
been on
true.
forever.
Yeah.
Dev,
Curb,
have you heard
yes.
about Jury Duty?
Yeah. I talked about it here. It's very good.
What? So the guy on it truly didn't know.
He didn't
right?
know. He didn't
How
know.
did they pull
A lot of normal people are not like us who are like at least
no,
like
but I'm
pop
just
culture
like
pilled.
there's something about the it's not that it's not that it's a legal thing exactly, but it feels morally
it's unethical. Like it toes the
Right.
line of those shows where like, are you just making fun of this guy? Is this mean? Nate, Ben, you were saying something. What were you gonna
Sorry.
say? You're finishing.
Oh, I think that it was just like the lightly fictionalized, like real life
Yeah.
version of a comedian's life.
I mean, that's
like really
Larry
popular
Sanders'
right
show.
now.
That's Larry
Yeah.
Sanders. That goes back and back and back. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess there's a long tradition of that, huh?
There certainly is. And now we can't watch Louis anymore. Oh well. Ugh.
I wonder if
whole
Louis
story.
has actually
Nope.
aged well, though.
I mean, I think there are a lot
Like
of
putting
episodes-
aside,
him being in garbage, but yeah,
Yeah.
I love that show. I think there were some good episodes. There were also episodes where you could kind of see the issues around him. But anyway, all right,
Yeah,
anything
like-
from the chat.
If there was like a really good like comedy blog that really just did that stuff, you could see someone doing let's rewatch Louis X number of years after the allegations and
Yeah.
see if there were hints dropped
Yeah.
in the shows there. Okay, so does anyone want to talk about tech? Let's get back to tech.
Anything else, or we could just go. We could just go. We're all fine.
we did have that long chat intermediary break
We
earlier.
had a long chat. It's we're good, folks. We're at noon. I think everyone's good. All right, let's wrap.
Oh
it up.
yeah,
We can
so
go.
actually
Yep.
there was one thing that I wanted to mention. So D-Man had a really interesting idea while we were talking about the Nintendo earnings call and talking about like how there's not going to be any new hardware coming out from them. And so D-Man said that they think that Nintendo could find enough of a market for a more expensive super-powered console and then also a less expensive like Switch 2 or maybe
No.
like a higher version and a lower version of the same console generation.
That's hard. That's too hard to develop for. I don't know.
It is hard to develop for, but I understand the initial idea of like, let's make 2 different like channels or 2 different tiers for the adult gamers who want power and the kids who are going
Then
to
you're
be
just
happy with a
repeating the
lot of
Game Boy
different things.
situation again. Like it's repeating the DS whole thing, right? So
The
Nintendo has
DS
done that
was still
before.
pretty powerful, or not powerful, popular.
no, that's what I'm saying. It was popular, and that was the kid-focused thing. But it seemed like they converged those things. So rather than having the more powerful console and the handheld thing, like they kind of wanted it all to be one thing. I'm gonna send you this file here, Ben. I think what Nintendo has learned is that first of all, people will play Nintendo stuff for a while, and this hardware, if they invest in good hardware, like it can last them a while. I think the thing we had mentioned before about potentially you dock that Switch, you get more power. If that, you have to confirm it. It can't just be like a thing people may want to buy. It has to be like an actual essential thing. If you want to play beyond 720p or something, right? If you want 1080p 60, you got to dock that Switch. If you want upscaling to 4K or 1440p, you have to dock it. And I think that is pretty fair. And the dock has to be in the box and part of the price,
Yeah,
You can't
yeah,
separate it. Yeah.
I do think that I saw someone. Oh yes, it was Buddy305 Love that said that Nintendo should make the dock an external GPU add-on.
That's basically, but
yes.
you know what's happened with the whole idea of external GPUs? Nothing. Because it's really like it's kind of failed as a category because the connection between the GPUs and the actual systems is not fast enough to take full advantage of the power of the GPUs.
So
maybe
you're talking
we need faster
about like
connectivity.
the reason that it's not fast enough is the latency between
It's not even latency.
X
It's like
thing
the
and
fact
Y
that
thing?
Thunderbolt, I believe, is not fast enough to like get all the GPU stuff across.
Okay, so not even Thunderbolt is fast enough.
You can get a really powerful GPU and put it in a dock, and basically you're getting half to 70% of the power of that GPU. So it's a waste of money. Doesn't make sense. And then the docks themselves cost $300 to $400. So just doesn't make sense. But I could see Nintendo doing a sort of dock that has its own like built-in hardware that works together with the hardware that's in the Switch, or the portable console. So there are ideas. There's certainly
So
ideas out
what
there.
would you say to the idea that Nintendo being maybe a little bit underpowered, but also being very creative with the power that they do have,
That's
being
what they
kind
do.
of a that
Yeah.
is a tradition.
Yep.
The Wii was not intended to go blow for blow with all of the other consoles.
The Wii
Well, I mean,
was
that
a
one
Hail
was
Mary.
woefully underpowered.
The Wii was a Hail Mary because they went blow for blow with the GameCube, which was more powerful than the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox.
Still didn't work.
technically. But the
I love the
GameCube didn't work
GameCube,
because
but-
they didn't have the third party support for it. So I think the GameCube's failure, which I loved that thing,
Yep.
made them be like, we got to do something else. We're Nintendo.
And I had no idea that the GameCube failed. I love the GameCube.
Yeah, man.
I mean, failed is strong, but it was
failed.
the third.
It
It was the
failed.
third of third. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the loser of that generation by far too. Yeah. Mark Dell's pointing out the new Asus handheld, the RG Ally. It can use an external GPU. Have you seen the cable for that thing? I was making fun of that with Sam, but Asus uses this big ass. It almost looks like a SCSI cable, like a parallel cable. It is because it's USB plus other stuff to get all the data off of the GPU, and their systems are also their external systems are also really expensive, so it's not worth it. We have so much power right now. Like we have even the Steam Deck can emulate so many systems, and we're seeing more powerful portables coming. I think there's a lot Nintendo could do with the hardware that's available right now.
Okay, I think I'm going to save my voice, so
All right, you good?
I'm tapping out. So
I think
we
we're
can...
good. Why
yeah.
you want to do your credits, or shall we just
Yes,
go?
yes. So thank you everybody for watching. The stream comes to you via our video team, which is Julio Barrientos and Luke Brooks. If you've stuck around this long, you know that we live in a world of algorithms better than the average person because you are a tech enthusiast. You're watching us do the very end of this whole thing. So rate us 5 stars on iTunes, rate us whatever the top rating is on Google Podcasts. Help other people see us on those platforms. Give us an in-person viral lift by telling a few friends that we are here, we are fun, you should come watch us. If you watched us, you owe us a download. Just download on your favorite podcast app, and we'll see you next week.
Later, folks.